One thing to finish up, and I want to hit this really strong. I know we're kind of over our normal time limit, but that's okay. We had somebody who got a little annoyed with me a couple days ago, and I'm trying to pull out uh, the statement was honestly in a coaching group, shouldn't the natural attitude be no matter what decision a member makes, we're here to support you? Is I thought that was an interesting statement. The reason why we are the premier of the premier, no bozos, the best possible place for people to be for the highest level is that's not our attitude. Our attitude is there are mechanisms and processes that work. There are mechanisms and processes that don't work, and there's areas in between of maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. Who knows? But we know these things over here will work. If anybody in the group is thinking about it, it doesn't matter what it is, opening a second or a third location, being the cheapest person in town, eliminating contracts, or I could come up with 20 different other things. You're always going to get a clear, unequivocal opinion on what it is, unless it's something like I said that, well, I don't know, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. I don't have any data on that. But we have extensive data, and um, have been for years very clear on keeping track of numbers, keeping track of statistics, looking at P&Ls, looking at thousands of schools across the country. And so there are things that you're going to have the bright idea to do, and you're going to hear from me or from other from Master Smith or Master Moody is no, that's a horrible idea. Or you're going to hear, that's an idea that's ahead of its time. Get to this point before you do it. And so if you want somebody to just tell you that each of your ideas are wonderful and pat you on the back for each of your ideas, this isn't the place to be, right? Is, the reason you're here is produce the highest quality students who stay as long as humanly possible so they achieve the highest level, and for you to have as little brain damage as possible while making the most money as possible. Then the question for you to always have for yourself is, what are my short-term goals? What are my intermediate-term goals? What are my long-term goals? And I've clearly had people who, what they decided their next step is something that I wouldn't recommend if they asked my opinion. And then absolutely it'll be, well, if that's what you want to do, I can give you 100% support and what you should do from what I have learned in the process. But don't ever feel that if you're on a meeting and what you're bringing up or not bringing up based upon numbers that you've shared, by information that you've shared, if it doesn't go exactly the way you were expecting it to go, that's the value that we bring to the table, not a detriment to the deal. And it's what I tell people on the way in the door over and over and over again is one of the things people get annoyed with me is oftentimes the reaction to I have a great idea is, oh, let's never do that. Or that's a good idea for next year after you hit this benchmark. Or it's a great idea, let's implement it immediately. And all three of those can be the right idea in the right context. Is you're not at the stage to worry about it. That's what Master Smith just said about the renewal process. And this meeting, what we want you to do is get where you can open the faucet at any time, pour in as many intros as you need, get to the volume that you need of new people coming in, and tap down the dropout rate so you can start growing your school. And we want to get the initial pricing where it needs to be, and I would say it needs to be $397 a month. And I would like it to be 500 initially that they're going to pay you plus $397 a month. And anything you equivocate at below that is just, having the Constitution to, and the chutzpah to do it rather than just, take action and do it. Because we've got over and over and over again, schools all over the country, small towns, big towns, rich areas, poor areas that are charging that and doing just fine. And so 200 students at an average of 400 or 500 a month sure beats the hell out of 200 students at an average of 150 a month. Much better bottom line, much better results. But I just wanted to point that out is, oftentimes you'll hear a conversation where myself, Master Moody, Master Smith, probably more me than anybody, is saying, I heard you say this. It's the wrong way to think about it. You should be thinking about it this way. Or I hear you want to do this, but really that's the worst idea. Let's try doing this instead. Is when we're saying that, we're saying it both out of experience of having, stepped on those, rocks and encountered all the, anything that you could possibly encounter that could go wrong in your organization. We've hit it before. And also from dealing with hundreds of schools, but the people that you consider the top 20 in the industry all tend to be friends of ours, and we've had insider knowledge. We have access to their numbers. We know the ones that look good on paper that aren't making money. We know the ones that maybe don't look good as good on paper, but have an easy to operate situation and higher student quality. We know the ones that have what looks like an exciting floor, but really don't produce great students. So we've had the insight behind that. But I just wanted to address that because I thought it was an interesting, criticism is taking somebody's idea that they were excited about and saying that's a bad idea is exactly what we're here for. It's no different than if I go to a high paid attorney or a high paid accountant and say I have this great idea to save taxes. If they tell me that it's going to get me, in handcuffs, it's like, oh, that was a bad idea. Or if they tell me that it's going to create a myriad of other problems, it's I wanted to have had that feedback. Master Moody, Master Smith, anything to add to that before we call it a day?
Wise people learn from other people's mistakes. So you're wise to learn from what our mistakes are, not try to reinvent things. I think that's where we get caught up a lot is you think of a good idea and it's great. We want you to think of good ideas. We want you to tell us. It's a good chance we've tried that or we can give you some data on whether that's working. That's what our job is. Our job is to help you grow, and that's what good mentors do, not make you feel better.
Yeah, and the other thing is never ever, it's a surest way to failure, feel like you've arrived. As soon as you feel like you've got all the pieces in place, that's when you're going to hit a plateau and start to decline. Is with everyone we're working with, and I don't care whether it's Jason, who's doing 120,000 a month right now, Tim Harrison, who's did 1.3 million last year. I can go through the list. Every one of them at some point in the last 4 years have hit a crisis point where without the support and without the development, things could have gone really, 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 really badly. So it's never that you've arrived. There's never a point where all the systems in place and you keep just turning the wheel. If nothing else, the people change, the market changes, the environment changes. But as soon as you decide that you've arrived, you're now setting yourself up for failure. So never have that feeling of looking in the mirror and saying, "Well, I've arrived," because there's always, we barely scratch